To my left, the 2023 Nissan Z with a 6-speed manual. To my right, the 2023 Toyota Supra with a 6-speed manual. Let's go for a drive. Before we get started, I have to note that this video is more of a first impressions type of review of both cars. The Z is from Nissan Canada and the Supra is owned by a friend of mine. Unfortunately, the Z was only available during this time in early December, which means frigid temperatures and guess what? Snow. So I didn't really have a whole lot of time with the cars and I couldn't enjoy each one due to the conditions and the fact that they both had summer tires. But I will try to get my hands on both cars again in the spring or summer of 2023 for a proper review, so make sure you subscribe to see that video. Starting things off in the Nissan Z, it still has a V6 under the hood, but it's not the old 370Z V6. Instead, it is the V6 from the Infiniti Q60 Red Sport. So it's a 3-liter V6 that is twin turbocharged, and it produces 400 horsepower and 350 pound-feet of torque. In the old 370Z, you had to rev the heck out of the engine before it produced enough torque to get the car going. In the new Z, peak torque is reached at just 1600 RPMs. This makes the car not only faster, but also much more responsive when the engine is at low RPMs. The turbochargers spool up quickly to provide maximum boost, and you can actually see how fast the turbos are spinning thanks to a new gauge in the center of the dashboard. On city streets like how I'm driving right now, this car feels very manageable. I don't feel intimidated by the 400 horsepower and the 350 pound-feet of torque. You can get this V6 with a 9-speed automatic, or you can get it with the 6-speed manual that this one has. It retains the synchro rev match feature, so it will automatically blip the engine every time you downshift, but you can turn it off at the switch of a little button right here next to the shifter. The shifter doesn't feel quite as crisp as the one in the Toyota Supra, but it does feel more, again, user-friendly when you're just driving on city streets. However, in second gear, when shifting into second gear, either from first or from third, I have noticed that it's just a little bit more difficult to get it into second compared to all the other gears. But other than that, I really don't have that many complaints about this shifter. Around corners, the Nissan Z feels, well, it feels more like a GT sports car. It doesn't quite feel as sharp and as track focused as the Supra. The steering is on the light side. Actually, it's pretty light for a sports car. I prefer it if it was heavier so that I can actually feel what the front wheels and the front tires specifically are doing and how much grip they have. It is direct and responsive. Pretty much all electric power steerings are, but it's just missing that feel. It needs to be a little bit heavier and a little bit less assisted. Other big changes to the Z include a stiffer chassis and a new limited slip differential. With the power that this engine produces, the back end can easily go sideways. But thanks to the chassis updates, the 2023 Z is quite manageable when you're looking out the side windows. If you catch my drift. Hint, hint. In the Toyota Supra, you get a turbocharged 3-liter inline 6. It produces 382 horsepower and 368 pound-feet of torque, according to Toyota. A lot of independent owners and magazines and auto reviewers, they've tested, or they put the Toyota Supra on the dyno and it's produced more power than that. But all I can say is Toyota claims 382 horsepower, 368 pound-feet of torque. And this car has a lot of power. The turbos spool up immediately. You reach peak torque at just under 2,000 RPMs and it is full boost. So this engine is a little bit more intimidating to drive on city streets, especially when the temperatures are hovering around the 0 mark like how they are right now. But this is a fabulous engine. It has power and torque pretty much everywhere in the RPM range. Response is immediate. It's just so nice. As for the transmission, it is a 6-speed manual, of course, and it's a little bit crisper to shift than the one in the Z. It just feels much more mechanical than the one in the Z. It doesn't feel quite as, I wouldn't say sloppy, but it feels tighter than the one in the Z. It does have rev match, just like the Nissan Z, but I would think that in this one it's just a little bit faster to respond, and it knows exactly what gear to go to. It's much more satisfying using this transmission and swapping it between the gears than the one in the Z. One of the first things that you'll notice as soon as you start driving the Toyota Supra is just how fast and responsive the steering is. I mean, it's almost like telepathy. Every little minute input that you give to the steering wheel, the front wheels immediately react. On top of all that, it feels a little bit tauter and tighter than the one in the Z. I can actually feel what the front tires are doing. Plus, as an added benefit, it's not too light and it's also not too heavy. So when I'm in rush hour traffic like right now, it's not tiring my arms out. It has just enough weight. So overall, on a twisty road or a racetrack, it's the Supra that shines between these two. That's not to say, however, that you can't have fun in the Z either. It's just that it feels a bit more rewarding in the Toyota Supra than in the Nissan Z. The 2023 Nissan Z has softer suspension than the 2023 Toyota Supra. As a result, the Z is much more comfortable as a daily driven car. The ride in the Supra is a bit more jittery and the ride height is lower as well. Whereas in the Z, it's much more forgiving when driving over a pothole. Inside the Toyota Supra, it looks very similar to all other versions of the Supra except for the center console, obviously. They have had to make it a little bit wider to fit the shifter as well as the iDrive controller, so it does protrude a little bit into the passenger's area. But it's not too bad, they still have plenty of space on their side. The only little niggle about the interior is the placement of the cup holders. So as you can see, I got a drink in the most backwards cup holder, and if I go to shift into second, it gets in the way. You kind of have to do some awkward movements, or maybe like go like this or like this, whatever you can, because these cup holders get in the way of shifting. But as for the rest of the interior, it is very much like a BMW, which is totally fine. I mean, it all has physical controls, climate, infotainment system. It is a touchscreen, of course, and it all just works. So I really can't complain about it. As for visibility, the mirror and the infotainment system do block a little bit of the right portion of the windshield, but out the front and out the sides, and even the blind zones on this side, it's not so bad. The blind zone on that side, it is a little bit, actually it's quite blocked by the C-pillar, but if you adjust your mirrors and use the blind spot sensors, you shouldn't have any issues. Out the back though, well, it is a sports car after all, so yeah, visibility is limited, just like in the Nissan Z. Speaking of which, let's go sit in that car. In the Z, it looks like a Nissan vehicle instead of something else, like a Mitsubishi, for example. All the controls are physical, including volume knobs and temperature control knobs. The shifter is in a good place, nothing really getting in the way, except for, just like in the Supra, the cup holder, and single cup holder in this one. That is, unless you slide back the armrest, then you get a second one. But with the armrest that far back, you don't really have anywhere to rest your elbow. So you got to move it forward to actually rest your elbow on the armrest. And yes, the cup holder kind of does get in your way just a little bit, but it doesn't feel quite as much as the Supra. Other than that, the infotainment system is the same one that is used throughout other Nissan vehicles. You still get analog gauges, a boost gauge on the far left, a turbo speed in the middle, and a volt gauge on the far right. But you do also have some auxiliary gauges in the driver display right in front of you, which is fully digital. As for visibility, again, the mirror does hamper a little bit of the visibility out the front right, but at least you don't have the infotainment system blocking a little bit from the bottom portion. In the front, it's pretty good. The A-pillar is nice and small. Out the side, pretty good too. To the right, the C-pillar does block my blind zone area, but just like the Supra, the Z does have blind spot sensors, and if you adjust the mirrors correctly, you shouldn't really have that many blind zones. And finally, for space, they're both pretty much identical. They both have nearly identical amounts of headroom and legroom, and at 6'4", I have more than enough space. And I also tested with the 2-liter Supra, which I did a review earlier in the year, and I can easily fit a helmet while sitting down and not have the helmet touch the headliner. So because both of these cars have the same amount of headroom, I'm assuming that the Z also has enough space for a helmet, if you go to track days, that is. In the trunks, the Toyota Supra has more space at 290 liters, while the Nissan Z has 241 liters. But the hatch opening is much wider in the Z than in the Supra, which makes loading and unloading a bit easier. Both vehicles are equipped with similar basic features. They both have leather upholstery, heated seats, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto connectivity, although it's wireless CarPlay in the Supra, backup cameras, parking sensors, automatic climate control, keyless entry, and push-button start. However, the Toyota Supra has a few more features that are not available in the Nissan Z. These include a built-in navigation system, a head-up display, a 12-speaker audio system, 8-speaker for the Z, and fully power-adjustable seats with adjustable side bolsters. In the Z, the seats are power-adjustable for front to rear motions and tilting of the backrest. But if you want to change the seat height, lumbar, or lift support, it's done manually. Between these two cars, obviously it's the Nissan Z that's going to attract more eyeballs, and I have noticed more people gawking at it than the Toyota Supra. Mind you, that could be because it's painted in a more flamboyant color than this Supra. But colors aside, I do like how the new Z looks, especially in person. I think it looks a bit better in person than it does in photos and videos. That being said, the Toyota Supra isn't bad looking either, but I would personally pick it in a different color, maybe red. Just to clarify, the A91 edition Supra that I'm driving is only available in two colors: Burnout, which is a matte white, and See You Later, which is this gray that has copper highlights when direct sunlight hits it. The standard manual Supra has more options for colors. And finally, the price of these two cars is what really sets them apart. The 3-liter 2023 Toyota Supra manual starts at $68,640 Canadian. The A91 edition package adds on approximately $1,600 to that price. The 2023 Nissan Z starts at $46,498 Canadian for the base sport trim, with this performance 6-speed manual trim costing $58,498 Canadian. So essentially, a $10,000 difference between these two cars. So in the end, how can I summarize these two sports cars? Well, the Nissan Z is a little bit more softer. It's more of a sports GT car rather than a full-on track-focused car. The suspension absorbs more bumps in the road, and the engine is a little bit more forgiving and not as intimidating as the one in the Supra. Whereas this, it has a much harsher ride, but the steering is just so precise. It's fabulous, and that engine has tons and tons of power. So that's kind of the best way to differentiate the two. If you want something that's more comfortable for daily commutes, the Nissan Z is the one you should be looking at. But if you want a track weapon and you don't mind the harsher ride, then of course the Supra is the one to go for. Mind you, this is significantly more expensive than the Z, but you can get it with a 2-liter engine, and I did drive it in the past and I genuinely do like it. but unfortunately it doesn't have the manual transmission. So for me personally, I'm still leaning more towards the Toyota Supra. There's just something about the way that it drives that's so much more satisfying. Don't get me wrong, the new Z is fabulous. I think it's a really great car, but personally, I'd go for the Supra. Which one would you go for? Let me know in the comments. If you want to know more about either of these two sports cars, I wrote a more detailed comparison review of them over on my website. You can find that link in the video description or click on the pop-up banner right up there. And as always, I will see you in the next car or truck or most likely an SUV. Anyway, thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.